And I'm excited to talk to my next guest on the Sports Card Shop guest line. This next gentleman is multi talented writer, musician, artist. I probably left something off. He's written for the New York Times, the New Yorker, SI, other publications not mentioned. But without further ado, let's welcome Andy Sunday Friedman to the show.
Hey, thank you. Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
I, Well, thank you for joining us. I got to ask, I mean, is there anything you can't do?
I don't know yet. I haven't tried everything.
Yeah, that's I have an idea where you got the Sunday moniker, but for those that may not know, or I might be guessing wrong, well, where did that come from?
There came a point in my life right around the time I guess I signed on Instagram where I made a shift in certain life decisions that left me on one side more mellow, and I got the nickname Sunday Andy. That was already taken apparently when I signed on, so I went with Sunday Friedman.
There you go, and the rest is history. Now, like I said, you're a musician, you're an artist, a writer. I mean, you don't have the nice thing is you don't have to not do any of those. Is there one that you enjoy more than the others?
It's all form follows function. I get credited, I guess, a lot for doing a lot of things, but I really look at it as one thing. Like a contractor shows up to the job with a toolbox, so I have a toolbox. I studied Renaissance painting techniques. I worked on painting sometimes for two years. Um, it's nice to be able to write a poem. It's nice to be
Yeah,
able to take a Polaroid photo. You can't always be making oil paintings for 2 years, 24/7. So then what?
yeah,
So as life happened and the less time I had in my studio, I adapted and learned a whole different arsenal of tools to express myself in various ways given the purpose. So I don't have a favorite because it always hits in the moment as
yeah.
exactly what I need.
Yeah, that's good to hear, and it's hypothetical. You can do whenever you want to do one. You don't have to give one up. I just figured I'd ask in case there was one, that stood out for. But like you said, they're all utilities at your disposal that you can use whenever the moment calls for it. Hobby background. Did you collect cards as a young kid?
I did. Yeah. Starting before I even really knew what baseball was. I
Yeah,
was really enthralled by the tactile feeling of them. I remember would accompany my dad. I guess I was 7, 6. Would accompany my dad on errands on Sunday or whatever. And at the end, I'd get a pack of 82 Fleer baseball cards, is what they sold in this one cigar shop.
yeah.
So, you know, I remember Mike Schmidt looked like one of my dad's friends, Steve. Like these were the ways I bonded with the players and the designs. But it was the designs that drew me in. I started drawing the cards when I was about 12. By that point, '86 Mets fever hit, so I knew I was all into baseball, and then started to go. It started with collecting Garbage Pail Kids and wrestling cards, and
Yeah.
then once baseball fever hit, then it was like, hey, let's try and get all the '86 Mets. So that's when it started.
Yeah, fellow Mets fan here as well. And we're going to talk later on. I got a question pertaining to them, but we're focused on the art. One thing I love about you and with the sports art, you don't always focus on the superstars. Well, that's nice, and a lot of other artists sort of do. You've done some of those lesser known players, very good in their own right, but less maybe spoken of. Why do you think that is? Where does that come from? Well, what sparked you kind of focusing? Is it sort of the underdog mentality, or I'll ask you, where did that inspiration come from?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, going back, I would paint the cards that I had without really knowing much about the players. So actually, 3 cards in the 2022 Spotlight 72 set include 3 cards that I drew when I was 12. They actually included it in the set. I didn't really know who Alan Trammell was. I just liked the design. I didn't know who Pedro Guerrero 81 Topps Dodgers was. I just loved the colors. So when I injured my hand, I did a lot of illustrating, a lot of guitar playing. After 10 years, I kind of came down with carpal tunnel and lost a lot of my fine motor skills, which I sort of relied on as my kind of superpowers through my entire life and my whole identity. I had to kind of learn how to embrace wobbly imperfection, if my hand never got better. So I wanted to draw things that weren't threatening to draw because I had enough pressure on myself with being hardly able to hold a pen. And so I gravitated to my old baseball cards in a shoebox. I wasn't going to hold, a Mickey Mantle card in my hand. So I pick like little common players. And also as somebody who made a living for 20 years drawing presidents of the United States on the cover of publications that they'd see, it was liberating to not have to really care about what the player looks like. So if I'm drawing Dave Winfield, that's everyone's hero. I got to represent him, but I could barely hold the pen. So having kind of like lesser known players, I didn't intend to share these drawings with anyone anyway. It just took the pressure off.
Yeah. Did I mean, where you were when you carpal tunnel is obviously while it's common, it's still scary because like you said, what even if you're not as talented as you are, Andy, right? We all use our hands, right? And they're important. Sometimes we take them for granted until there's something wrong or they're injured or you hurt it. Was that a scary time? Like, what if this, I don't get like full range back or they're not 100%? Was that kind of weighing on your mind too?
Yeah, it was really scary. I had everything wrapped up in my perfectionism, which I had honed since I was 6. Since the earliest drawings I can think of. So not only was it my sort of identity, it was also my livelihood. So, you know, um, I had to really think about it. I mean, I already broke the idea that I am a painter who is put on this earth to carry in the footsteps of Vermeer and Velázquez. Like I said, my life didn't turn out where I could spend 18 hours a day on a painting if I needed to. So I broke the identity I had already of myself as some kind of fine art painter of that medium. So I'm free to invent whoever I am, So, uh, yeah, what was I saying?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad. Well, we were talking about, worrying about whether you'd get back to,
Oh,
full range, but thankfully,
yeah, no, right.
uh,
So what it turns out, really what the talent is in adaptation, ability to
yeah,
adapt. So I'm
yeah,
not a painter or a guitar player or a writer or this or that. You're an artist. If I lost my hands, if I was a head in a jar, I used to say that in college. I would figure out a way to like express myself. You can always adapt.
yeah,
Unlike an athlete, if you're injured, unfortunately, it's the end of the road. But artists can always adapt.
yeah,
So it was a scary time, but it was a challenge.
yeah. And like you said, you adapt and you keep moving forward. Um, you growing up in New York, like Mike Schmidt, your idol. Did you take a look? People who listen to the show know this. I grew up in New York City, and I was a Steeler fan from a very young age, and I took a lot of heat from my friends. Like, how are you not a Giants or Jets fan? You live in New York. And it was the whole Mean Joe Green, the Coke commercial. That kid had a resemblance to me. I just didn't get into the Jets or Giants during that time period, and I've been a Steeler fan ever since. Being a Mike Schmidt fan, even though obviously he's a Hall of Famer, a great player, being a Philly, did you take a little heat for sort of liking Schmitty in New York, or not too bad?
Took a little heat, less heat, more confusion from people.
Yeah,
But the reason why he was my favorite player was really due to baseball cards.
Yeah.
As a rookie in Little League in my only season when I was 12, I froze at the plate. I struck out every single at bat. I never hit. And, Mike Schmidt's rookie year wasn't that great either. And then the next
Yeah.
year, he came back to lead the league in home runs year after year after year. It was so inspiring to me. And so when I was having trouble hitting, like I kind of quit baseball and I started playing softball in the summertime. And I just kind of like, we lived in the Poconos in the summer, so we got the local Phillies broadcast. So I would watch Mike Schmidt. The reason why I started watching him was I mentioned 82 Fleer packs. I pulled
Yeah.
a Schmidt and it looked like one of my dad's friends. So it just kind of like, I just was like, oh, that's that guy who I pulled when I was a kid. Let's watch him
Yeah.
bat. And just the way he would stand there, exactly the opposite of my coach, would make me so nervous. Like, bend your knees, elbows up, tight. Like he just kind of stands there, like a lumberjack with an axe on his
Yeah.
shoulder. And so I just kind of tried that as a kid and just was like imitated him. And then because I was so relaxed, the ball found the bat. So I used that as really a metaphor for anything you do in life, like learn
Yeah.
how to kind of swing easy and rely on know-how and level-headedness. And that's what Mike Schmidt symbolized to me. It had nothing to do with New York or Philly.
Yeah. No, that's a great story. And you got to interview him yourself. You got to meet him. What was that like? Speak of that experience.
I mean, here it's already in lockdown. My folks are in
Yeah.
Florida, but they leave behind a cabin in the woods in Pennsylvania, where, like I said, where I spent my summer. So that was available to my family and I. We stayed there for 4 months, and that interview happened during that time. So here I am in like the childhood bedroom, where in the room where I used to watch him as a kid
Yeah.
talking to him on a device deep in the future, like that didn't even exist back then. You know what I mean? Like if my childhood self could picture myself in 35 years or whatever, interviewing Mike Schmidt on a little phone, like what the whole thing was so surreal. And then of course, just to be meeting my hero, but having a conversation with him, it was great actually. It was a beautiful, beautiful moment. It meant a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Some people never get that opportunity and whatnot. Um, let's talk about the Mets. You're a Mets fan. I'm a Mets fan. We lived through the Wilpon era. I think that's all you need to say. No explanation is needed. We now have Steve Cohen as the owning the team. A lot different from what we're used to. Back during the Wilpon eras. He's willing to open the checkbook and try to make things happen and get a winning team. And obviously the goal is to win a World Series. I mean, just thoughts as a fellow Mets fan, just the dichotomy of that, right? The Wilpon era where we rarely signed anybody, and now we're improving and trying to be competitive because of a new owner who wants it, who's a fan of the team just like us. He's got the willpower to do it and the means.
Yeah, a lot of the kind of bad luck outcomes of the Wilpon era seem to have sort of dissipated, fallen off the Mets. Like they're not as hapless and bound for the opposite of what we want, which we've become so used to as a kid, starting with like Pulsifer and Wilson and
Yeah,
Isringhausen, and that was going to be
yeah.
it, and this was going to be our year, and so on and so on. Suddenly, the walking the walk and talking the talk.
Yeah, and it's nice to have an owner that cares and wants the team to win, not looking to just fill up his bank account in the process. And it's nice every year to feel like we have someone calling the shots that is taking it as personal as we do as fans, right? And you win, you live and die with the outcome of the standings, and I think he does as well. He mentioned trying to bring a World Series in the next when he took over the team 3 to 5 years now in his second year, and so we've seen what they've done this off season, and it's nice because I know what the alternative was before Steve Cohen bought the Mets, and a choice between the two, it's an easy one. So it's good to
Hmm.
know that in a division that's tough, right? With the
For
Braves and the
sure.
Phillies, the Marlins have their moments, even, and it's nice to know that he's going to do whatever he thinks is necessary to try to accomplish what every fan hopes will happen. So it's a different feeling as a Met fan, and one I embrace than the prior one.
Yeah, it feels good. It feels
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. So you've worked on a lot of mediums. You've worked with gum. You've been put your artwork on cleats. Is there a medium you haven't worked with yet that's on your list or that you're looking forward to working with?
Uh, yeah, I think it would be nice to return to oil, which I haven't done in 25, almost 30 years.
Yeah.
That's what I was schooled on. That's what I was trained on, and it would be nice to. I envision almost making a return to oil on the face of a card. That would be pretty
Yeah.
cool. So I think of that sometimes.
Yeah. What was it that where you got away from it? How come?
Well, I worked on this one painting for 2.5 years. From the time I was, let's see, 20 years old to 23. I was a sophomore, junior, senior in college, art school. Uh, Graduated without having finished the painting yet. Rented a office space above an auto body garage out on Mineola, Long Island for $150 a month, where I sold a couple of actually I sold a couple of portraits of some guys I played softball with in the summertime and put them into like Topps baseball card borders and
Yeah.
made enough money to buy this studio for a few months where I would just paint, finish this thing. I finally did. And then waited a year for it to dry because that's how long it takes to before you can put the final picture varnish on, which kind of
Yeah.
seals it behind invisible armor forever. And I kind of botched that process after a year. I didn't let it dry long enough. I've been using mixtures in my paint that slowed the drying time, so I've kind of ruined the painting and watched it and my whole idea of perfection, which in my mind I had
Yeah.
captured. I kind of destroyed that painting, and it sent me into a kind of a creative awakening where I started to then embrace, imperfection. That's when I became a musician. I don't know anything
Yeah.
about music. I never sang a note until I was recording my first record. I didn't play
Huh.
guitar till I was 30, and
Yeah.
I've recorded the first record like 9, 10 months later because I wanted to just kind of capture my inability to do stuff.
Yeah.
So that's how I got off oil. Plus, like I said, I used to get into my studio as a college student so early, it would take me 2.5 hours just to prepare my palette.
Yeah.
So I don't have that kind of life right now.
Yeah. So on the music side, you're self-taught. I mean, you teach
Yeah.
yourself? That's incredible.
Yeah. I learned from listening to the 1920s country and country blues musicians who weren't necessarily musicians either. They just had something to say and
Yeah.
knew two chords or three chords and made it as
Yeah.
easy as they could on themselves. So that empowered me to try. Johnny Cash says two chords and the truth. Okay, I
Yeah.
have that. I mean,
Yeah.
as an artist, that's my whole job is to be true, remain true. And you know, trying my best is probably an interesting sound as long as you
Yeah.
own it. And it's like all my country blues heroes, they didn't go to Juilliard. So it
Yeah.
was kind of like
Yeah.
just kind of sink or swim as a kind of artistic
Yeah.
experiment.
Now it's like trying something new, like just kind of cold turkey, just say I'm doing this. Is it a nervous experience? Are you relaxed? Like I
Uh,
know speaking myself, I'd be a nervous wreck, but that's me. Like for you? Does it just come sort of
I
naturally?
guess, I guess combating the nerves is the performance,
Yeah,
and arm wrestling them to the ground is when the audience sees that that's what happened, and you give a performance of genuineness for having arrived and delivered. And so that was the thing. That was the formula. I thought if you exhibit doing it and committing to it
yeah,
and not letting nerves get in the way, it's a clear shot, emotional shot, I think, as humans. So I did my best, but I took it right to the stage. So it's like,
yeah,
was I self-taught? I don't know. I think like the audience taught me. I had a
yeah,
band for a while. They taught me. But playing, it's like, they say a performance is worth 1,000 rehearsals. I never really rehearsed. It was like always on the stage. And then when I got home, I
yeah,
wasn't really playing guitar. It was like a performance thing. So
yeah,
it wasn't until I picked up the guitar again in 2020 during the lockdown when I really, for the first time ever, just kind of like formed a relationship with the instrument in a whole other way.
yeah. Trial by fire. Now,
Yeah.
how about like one thing playing the guitar, whether it's 2 chords, 3 chords, it's still playing guitar. How about songwriting itself? Now, obviously, you have a writing background. Do you think that made it easier, or again, is it something you just, hey, I'm doing this. This is how it's going to go. Talk about the song. Did it did it take you long to write songs, or talk about that process?
Well, no, like some of them I wrote, and as long as it took to sing them. But I
Yeah,
actually don't have a writing background. I learned on the job there too.
yeah,
And yes, I have written and had the great pleasure of having anything to do with the institution of the New Yorker magazine, where I really got my start, in the
hmm,
as a messenger. Uh, um, but sorry, hold on, edit this part
yeah,
out.
yeah. You're good.
Brain freeze. Where are we going with that? You had
Well, I was
asked me
just
what
saying, I mentioned writing background, you
mm,
said I really don't have one, but you were
songwriting.
fortunate to
Yeah,
work
songwriting.
for some of those places.
Right. So right. So getting back to songwriting is what we're talking about
Yeah.
writing songs. Um, no. Shit.
Let me ask it in a different way.
Yeah.
When you write a song, does it pop in your head and you're like, I got to write this down, or do you say, hey, I'm going to write a song today, and then formulate it? Like,
Okay.
where does
So
it come from?
yeah. So uh, after I was pushing the cart around at the New Yorker, I became the assistant to the cartoon editor, and it was my job to understand what a New Yorker cartoon was, and this relates to songwriting. I promise.
Hmm.
My boss was like, he's the cartoon editor. He tells me, since the 20s, this is the thing. The picture is the delivery. The line is the line. You're a stand-up comedian, but in cartoon form. And
Yeah.
it's all about saying the biggest things with the fewest amount of strokes. At the same time, I was starting to get into country music and country blues music, which were extolling those same virtues, which is like say the most with the fewest amount of strokes. And I was learning this concept. So as long as I'm sitting there absorbing, I had to look at hundreds and hundreds of cartoons a week and whittle it down to a stack of about 50 that my boss would whittle down to fewer, and then they'd bring it to the big boss at the end and they'd sell maybe 15, 20 a week. The collect of all the submissions that come in. So I was really,
Yeah.
really getting it. So I wanted to try my hand in it, not to become a cartoonist, but as a practice for writing country music lyrics, because I was starting to get into writing lyrics, but not to sing and not to play on guitar, but to accompany my slideshow
Yeah.
that I did. I traveled around with projections of my paintings and drawings, and I accompanied them with spoken verse. So I wanted to kind of write lyrics. That's how it started for me. And then as I walk around the street, like I said, at home there's the easel with the paint, but on the street you got a notebook. Someone says something, you write it down. I don't know if it's going to be a
Yeah.
song lyric. I don't know if it's going to be a cartoon. I don't know what it is. But after a while, something starts brewing inside. You play a few chords, you like the way it feels, and you get, I think I need to write a song about this. And I look at my notebook and I take out all of the little things I wrote that have anything to do with the feeling I'm feeling right now. And then it starts to become assembled. And that's kind of how I did it. But sometimes I'd write a song right on the spot.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would be notebooks and notebooks of actual thinking and writing and scheming and plotting. And so they all take different lives, but I'm always a form follows function kind of artist. It's like the way it looks, the way it sounds is because it's supporting something that needs to be said. So it starts
Yeah.
with, satisfying an emotional need. Everything
So I
follows
mean,
that.
let's the way my dad's a drummer. I'll steal one of his lines. It comes from your heart, your soul. It comes from within, and like you said, it can take many forms. Sometimes it's a longer form, and sometimes it just very quickly, comes and there it is, and nothing wrong in either case because it's genuine from yourself. So that's very very cool talent. I for sure don't have there, but let's speak about the top spotlight 70. Kind of talk about how that how tops got a hold of you, how that thing all came about, the whole process.
Yeah. Well, I told you the story about how I started drawing these kind of obscure players, and I wrote a
Yeah.
story about it for the New Yorker, NewYorker.com. I would contribute illustrated reportage or illustrate my own interviews with people. And in this case, I wrote an illustrated essay called "The Loneliness of the Common Player," and it was all about the whole story I just told you, and it was
Yeah.
illustrated with a lot of the cards. It was actually Scott Rogowski, who a friend of mine, a friend of my brother's. We bonded over obscure jerseys. We all have,
Yeah.
obscure like Kelly Gruber jerseys and stuff. And he saw that piece and he said, I used to work there. I'll take you on a tour of Tops. So for years we kind of were trying to get me a tour of Tops because I definitely I revered the brand since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Never quite happened. But right before the pandemic, sort of like let's put a pin in this. We approached them one more time, and I guess they were laying off a lot of people. It was a different time in the
Hmm.
industry. Then came the pandemic and the boom. I
Yeah.
started collecting again. Rogowski started collecting again. I said, I wonder. I know we put a pin in it last we spoke, but how's Topps doing right now with the boom? And he's like, actually, they're having their best time ever. There's Project 2020, and they're about to do Project 70. Maybe this is a great time to reconnect. And within 2
Yeah.
weeks, I was talking with. I just interviewed Schmidt for the New Yorker, so I had that to kind of throw in the pile. And they saw the loneliness of the common player piece, and I pitched it as a Spotlight 70 umbrella tribute to the 70th anniversary while they have all these great artists doing tributes to iconic cards. Let's not forget the legacy of the shoebox collection. We all have
Yeah.
them. And, I tried to paint as many cards from my shoebox as I could. And that's kind of how it came about. I pitched it as like I was going to do one Project 2020 or 5 Project 70s, but they liked the concept so much they offered me my own set, and that's how Spotlight
Yeah.
70 happened.
Well, very cool. How much artistic freedom do you have to do the players that you want to do? Do they tell you, hey, we need to see this guy or this guy, or is it kind of kind of a combination of both? We need these couple guys for sure. Who are you thinking that you want to add to the checklist? Talk about like who appears, how that process occurred.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, firstly, the first idea was, wouldn't it be fun to put out a whole bunch of like Champ Summers and Pat
Yeah.
Dobson and like a whole bunch, like the real fan
Yeah.
favorites. But they didn't have the rights to a lot of these players. Okay, so
Yeah.
they were like, great concept. Can you use this list? And of course I could. Other than
Yeah.
that, I mean, they gave me complete creative freedom. It was such a pleasure to work with them. uh, I curated the set. I chose. I even asked, like, because I'm used to having art directors, like, what
Yeah.
style, anything you want, man, have fun.
Yeah.
So it was so amazing. And then their innovation was like how to, make them 1 of 5 foils. Each card has a CMYK 1 of 1. The autographs, incentivizing the set, offering all these amazing inserts and variants. It was so it was a that was the tag team, but they really gave me a lot of creative freedom. And along the way, inserted a few, like, it'd be awesome, this one, that one, like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
bring it. So they definitely threw a couple in there. The Jackie Robinson that I painted in this last set, this is the
Yeah.
56 Robinson. That was Topps' idea. But the funny thing is, I don't paint cards if I'm not holding it in my hand. I
Yeah.
won't paint from a phone. I won't paint I have to
Yeah.
have the card. So I had to buy the card. I
Yeah.
never had it.
Yeah, well, it's not a bad card to have. I'm a Jackie guy. You see, I'm wearing
I
my
see it.
Brooklyn Dodgers cap. Now, obviously, I'm old, but not old enough to have seen him play. He passed away, unfortunately, a month before I was born. But my dad grew up in Ebbets Field and seen all those guys in the visiting teams. And it's if you're from Brooklyn, as you well know, right? You know what the legacy of Jackie Robinson is, not just on the field, but even off of it. And so, even as a young kid who never got to see him play, I knew who Jackie was, what he was about, and just became someone I looked up to, even though he was no longer with us at that time. Just what he stood for, what he meant, and what he had to go through to accomplish those things. And so here, hearing you talk about the Jackie piece and having to buy the card, definitely hits me in the heartstrings, and it's a great card, and you did a great job with your inclusion of it, and there it gives you a reason to buy, in that case, a Jackie Robinson card to add to the collection. Has the project even got you more into cards? Like, you find yourself, even
Uh,
more so than you would have thought.
well, honestly, I started getting back into it before the Topps thing
Yeah.
happened. So the fact that the Topps thing happened after I started to collect again was even more of a thrill. But no, well, I'm around a lot more card shows now, and I travel
Yeah.
all over the country, setting up my spot in the show and talking with collectors and showing what I got. But I also walk the floor a lot and still
Yeah.
collect. But hey, look, people collect what they collect. What I collect and what I've been running on for the last maybe 3 years, I try to find the most exciting cards that I can find in the worst possible condition.
Yeah.
And so, like, I just got a 1955 Bowman Eddie Matthews for $14. It looks like it
Yeah.
was in a laundry machine. I love it. So that's
Yeah.
honestly, that's kind of all I spend my money on.
Yeah. Well loved, as they say in Javi. A well loved card. So, well,
Well,
that's
yeah.
great. Is that? Do you think that the relationship with Tops will continue, maybe in another form, even after this? Like, you think that's something we'll see more from you and Tops?
We're having a great time together. I don't see why it wouldn't. Um, yeah.
Yeah, well, I hope so. You're doing a great job with it. It's a different kind of spin on things, a different take, and in a hobby that's been around as long as it has, it's really hard to do something different. I think the degree of difficulty goes up, but you've managed to do it with your own vision and talents, and I think a lot of people are enjoying it. And I hope hope it continues even with something that comes off of that as well.
I think that's the idea. I mean, the first set came out. Look, I mean, what really drives the art card, movement right from the beginning? We're starting with maybe like Diamond Kings, like
Yeah.
realism, faithfully painted portraits of stars. So here I am hitting them
Yeah.
up with a set of improvisationally painted fan favorites. That's a
Yeah.
leap for Topps, and kudos to them for giving this a try and giving me the whole set. So like that was a huge innovation for them and a huge risk to an authored set. And yeah, I think it sold 4,800 boxes out of the 10,000 that they were gonna cut it at limited edition set in 30
Yeah.
days, which
Yeah.
was pretty much what they thought it would sell, enough to say let's try again. And Spotlight 72 sold out in 72 hours. So
Yeah.
that was very exciting, and it definitely showed, as did the prices, I guess, on the secondary market over the winter. Before the first one came out, there was no value, there was no anything, no comps.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been received well, and it's been a lot of fun to connect with people at the table at the card shows who maybe don't know anything about it, and then we start getting into conversations about one of ones and hand painted one of ones and paintings and
Yeah.
rarity versus condition, all that kind of stuff. It's been a lot of fun. And also
Yeah.
the
And
nostalgia factor of
yeah.
the select. Getting back to your first comment about who I paint, this gives people. There's not many tables where you walk around and you see like an Ellis Burks '88 tops and the thing, like, to even start talking about that. So here I have paintings of like '82 George Bell, like Brett Saberhagen rookie. People are just
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, oh my god, well, Dwight Evans record breaker card.
Yeah.
So the conversations start to become about these shoebox cards and the times and those moments and the Dewey Evans, earliest home run in 1987. I remember that day. That kind of stuff. You start talking like
Yeah.
that. It's good.
It's sort of like music, Andy, right? You hear a song comes on the radio, and obviously you recognize the song. But I know for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people, probably yourself, it brings you back to a time in your life. I remember that year. I was a sophomore in high school. I was in sixth grade, and that's things like that. And the same thing can be said, I think, with cards. Someone to see that you mentioned, Brett Saberhagen, that the rookie, like, oh man, I was buying all those up, or I had 100 of them, and it takes you back, that, like you said, the nostalgia of it. It doesn't have to be always that superstar guy. It doesn't always have to be Mickey Mantle or Willie Mays. It could be, like you said, Champ Summers or Dwight Evans, Brett Saberhagen, Ellis Burks, George Bell. Those guys
The
were
nostalgia.
talented in their own right. And it's nice that Topps allowed you that freedom, because here they come off of the 2020 project, and those are obviously all those kind of upper echelon players, the
Mm-hmm.
Mantles and Mays, and that, and that's all well and good, but that's why I appreciate you sort of cover everyone that's part of the game, not just the Hall of Famers and the like, and all those guys together, right, bring us back to different times in our lives. And I think it's important. I think like you said, things selling out so fast tells you that people like the nostalgia effect, the impact, and it brings them back to a time when, at the time when we didn't care as much about the values, comparatively speaking, to today's hobby. But great job by you. I hope to see more to come, and I appreciate you sharing some of that insight. Like you said, you're starting to, you're traveling, you're going to some of these shows. It's a great opportunity. You get a lot of people coming up to you and like requesting, hey, do put this guy in. You get a lot of like, hey, why, do this guy, do this guy. You get a
I
lot of
actually
that.
do. Yeah, I do. I get quite a lot of commissions, which I'm always
Yeah,
always happy to do. And the thing is, I only paint a card once.
yeah,
So
that's it.
so the first person to grab, so that's it. I shut it down. So no two collectors are gonna have the same card.
Yeah, that's cool.
And we'll have a good time in a culture collision this year in Atlanta. They're bringing in a few art card artists, and I'm proud to be
Yeah,
one of them. But that's a lot of fun. We're seeing a lot of channels outside of the conventional card shows that are starting to embrace the
Yep.
art cards, and it's been really really exciting.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that'll even go stronger as time goes on. Well, Andy, I appreciate you coming on, sharing some of that insight, thought process, where this all comes about. You know, when you just see it, you forget about the story and what goes on behind the end result, right? And I'm glad you were able to share some of that for myself, who finds it very interesting. I'm sure a lot of people who are listening right now as well. I always give the guests sort of the final word. Give out your websites, social medias, anything you want to get out there so people can see, what you're up to and follow along and stay up to date.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my website is andyfriedman.net. And from there, you can find my Instagram page, which is Sunday Friedman. And from there, the rest of it. That's all you need.
There you go. Well, Andy, continued success. I appreciate you again coming on, making some time, and keep doing what you're doing. It's a pleasure to see what comes next. Continued
Thanks so
success.
much. Thanks so much, John. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.